Okay, now what we want to do is we want to start thinking about using color. Now, and actually, there are a couple things you need to understand. Number one, we're going to paint with different colors and textures and things of that nature. And this is a part where you're going to have to show some of your own little creativity. And then the other part I want you guys to do is I want you guys to actually take a look at some of how the rendering tools work. All right, so if you look down here, there's a little thing that's called, it calls the material editor. It looks like a little paint palette. And I'm going to click on that, and it opens up this little box, okay? And you notice nothing really happens except it does paint it with whatever color I have here. Well, if I want to change the color, I can click on the little color picker and slide it over and then paint. And what the funnel essentially does, and actually it doesn't do anything that much different from the roller, is it paints things different colors. Now, there is a couple of other tools here that I want you to experiment. One of the tools is this little paintbrush, which actually allows you to paint faces different colors. So you notice that I'm painting the face a different color, and when I go down here and I hit render object, you notice that now I have a two-colored name. All right, and there's another thing here that's the little spray bottle, and I'm going to tell you something with spray bottles, is a spray bottle is very likely to cause your computer to blow up. Okay, you notice I was able to actually put a little color into this. It's a little different from what I had before. All right, so that's little different things that we can do. All right, now don't worry about that. I don't want to really make a big deal. Other than you can paint things different colors. All right, but I think I'm just going to paint the entire thing blue. I don't really like the two-tone color. I am going to do something else, though, and there's a bunch of little buttons here that you guys need to learn to play with. And I'm going to suggest very strongly that you guys do something different from what I'm doing. All right, the next button is what's called a bump map. Now, you notice that it's completely flat. Now, it's funny, I would use the word texture to describe this, but unfortunately, in computer graphics, 3D graphics, texture means something else. So you have to realize that bump means this. All right, it creates an illusion of 3D. Now, you'll notice that there's a little red arrow. Whenever there's a red arrow and you click on it, and I expect you guys to do this, it gives you a way of adjusting parameters. Now, the scale is 1.5. I wonder what happens if I drag that down. Okay, you notice how it becomes smaller. Boom. And I think that's too small, so I'm going to drag it up a little bit more. Boom. And I got those little bumps, and isn't that cool? All right. Separation, I don't know what that does. Let's try. Oh, it spreads them out further apart. Let's drag it closer together. Now they kind of meld together. All right, and you can play with all of these different things, and they change the rate and the depth. You can, if you go center depth higher, I suspect. Well, that's interesting. Center depth really seems to have an impact on it. There we go. Wow, it seems that it can only go to a certain depth. Okay, so there you go. All right, so that's how you do bump map. And then the next thing is reflectivity, reflectance. And you notice there's a couple of ways of adjusting reflectance. I can right-click on it, and it gives me some options. Here's one that's called Fong. Here's, what is that called? It's a reflectance shader. I guess that's glass of some sort, which really, one thing you need to understand is when you do something in glass and there's nothing around it, it doesn't really look all that cool. This very high reflectance called conductive is kind of cool. That's one you may want to play with. That makes something very mirror-like. You can see the extra little lines around it. That's how it's distorting the light that comes near it. Okay, so that's reflectance. All right, so you can play with that. And then finally, the last thing I want you guys to play with is texture. Now, okay, oh, by the way, if you do again, you can change the luminosity of your object and make it brighter. You can do all sorts of cool things. How you can affect the shininess if you want to make it, how reflective it is. Those are all things you can do. All right. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to try using a texture here. And if you click over here, down here on the side, you'll notice that something has these three colored balls with different pictures on them. These are all different textures you can use. Like, for instance, let's try granite over there. You notice granite resets it. All right, and wow, that doesn't look good at all. I wonder why. Wireframe. It looks like it doesn't really want to repaint it. Okay, and I find that kind of odd, actually. All right. Again, I think maybe yep, see? Okay, now this is actually an important lesson. If you notice that you can see the color where I did the spray can, that made it too much for this to work. All right, so that's our lesson on how to use textures. I'm going to spend a little bit of time. I'm going to have to split this guy up into two, and I'll show you a little bit more. But remember, if you overload your computer, it will seize up, and if you haven't saved, you're going to have to start the whole thing all over again, just like I am. All right,